bringing the women to the Capitol to share their own work, to really represent their work, which is, I think, really important in participatory action research, really giving them credit to the community because they're creating the products. That was critical for the women. They felt validated. And I think for me in the future, it will help me go back to do future work with them. It really helps to develop trust and understanding because they were the ones to come to Kathmandu and share that work. So that was really critical, and I think that applies to other participatory action research too, is really giving them a chance to disseminate that work as well, right? It's not just us writing a paper or a report, but it's really, they should stand up and share their work in innovative ways. And so that's, I think, something that some of you could think about in your work as well. The women also said that they felt more confident after participating in a study like this. And I think that was interesting because it's different, right, from doing a survey or an interview. It was really working with them over the course of 2 years, developing trust, and they developed a lot of skills through that. They learned how to make films. They learned how to stand up in front of policymakers and give a speech. That was something they never dreamed of doing, I think. And so that was really powerful to see, and I think all of us have an opportunity to bring those kinds of things into our research. It's not so difficult to do, and I think it's a great opportunity to highlight the voices at the local level. Of course, as with any research study, we had a lot of challenges and limitations as well. The first, I think, is primarily around the fact that because we were focused on the policymakers for this screening, we prioritized the comfort of the policymakers. I think most of you are aware that policymakers have a certain way of communicating and working, and they hold a lot of power. And so at the film screening, the policymakers asked a lot of questions, but the women, we did not have time for them to answer every single question, and that was difficult for the women because they felt, this is my opportunity. This is, Tar Lamsa's here. I need to respond to his question, but we didn't have time for everybody to respond. So that was challenging. So we have to learn how to, I think, navigate those very difficult power dynamics in a room where you have community members, from Kirtipur, and high-level ministers. That's very difficult. And again, coming back to the local board chairman who was there, he really helped to facilitate that conversation. So that was something that we learned. It would not have been possible without his presence there to help bridge that gap. So one thing that we also did was we had a debriefing session with the filmmakers, with the community members afterwards, because we could see that they had a lot to say, but they didn't have a chance to say everything. And so we had a debriefing session afterwards where we collected the responses of the women who wanted to share more information with the policymakers. And the local ward chairman was there to capture that information and communicate that up. So making those linkages, again, is very important. And certainly we know that, like any research study, we have limitations. So this limitation here was that we had a 1-hour documentary that captured only certain aspects of menstruation. It was not obviously capturing everything, every cast, every experience. So we have to make sure that we set the expectations. This is one example of a very complex cultural practice. And so the policymakers sometimes are saying, but you didn't show the Guru practice, or you didn't show the Christian practice. Yes, that's a limitation, because this is one village and one group of women, so it's their story. And so we have to also frame our research in that way. I think it's very important to say, this is one complex story, but there are many stories in this room and in this country, and so we have to continuously highlight different stories from different regions and different parts of Nepal. We also found that the films were long, so we found that reaching policymakers, we have to have messages and dissemination tools that are very short and quick. Their attention is so limited, and maybe you only have 10 minutes to share a story with them. So our next step is to also make these films quite short. They were on 30 minutes, but we are going to make them very short so we can share with more policymakers and try to get their attention quickly. And of course, different communities have different traditions, so we really have to highlight the importance of diversity and highlighting diverse voices and making that clear to the policymakers. So the way forward, when asked to the policymakers, what's the next step? How can we use this information in the future? They talked about the power of using participatory action research and film, and they were accepting and open to it. But they suggested that we coordinate with the National Health Education Information and Communication Center to really streamline how our data can be used by the government. So they talked about if we house our films and this data with that center, the government at different levels will be able to access and use that for advocacy. So that's something that we would like to explore in the future. Really making sure that, we create these amazing projects and we have these amazing outputs, but who has access and who can use those is a really important question that we should ask. And so we're trying to really streamline that process so the government can use these films. The policymakers also talked about the importance of bringing in policymakers from the national level. So we were talking about at Kathmandu level, but also the district level. So we're actually going tomorrow to Kirtipur to hold a community level, district level screening of the films as well, and bringing board chairmen, local level government leaders who can also come, because we know they also have a lot of power and they can lift up these voices of these women as well. So it's important to not only reach policy makers in Kathmandu, but also the district. And they also suggested that we add Nepali subtitles. Someone had said the local language there is different. So actually, a lot of the policymakers could not understand everything that the women were saying in the film because it was from Kirtipur. So they suggested we add Nepali subtitles so everyone can experience these films from across the country. So that's something that we want to do as well. When talking to the women filmmakers, they also had dreams and ideas going forward for the films. And so, again, we're going to hold a local screening. The whole partnership with this community and the process is really important. So again, I talked about this collaborative filmmaking process as being a participatory action research. And part of that is working with them also in the community to design the film screening. So we asked them, who should be here? Who do you want to invite? Where do you want to hold the screening? How do you want to do it? Who should give the speech? All of those decisions, we are really trying hard to make in partnership with the community so that we have the biggest impact. And so again, I think another example of participatory action research is incorporating your participants at all stages of the study. And so that's been really successful because sometimes we don't know the right people to be in the room, right? You all have that expertise. The community members have that expertise to know who is the powerful one, who should be there. And so they invite them and they come. So that's been really helpful to make sure that our films have the biggest reach as possible. And the women also talked about actually, this film focused on menstruation, but they talked about wanting to use film and collaborative filmmaking to research other issues. So they talk about drug addiction in their area in Kirtipur and how important it is to address that issue. And so we were excited that they said we want to use film, we want to use movie making to highlight other issues in our community. So they're already thinking about other ways and other issues that they could potentially address in their community, which I think shows that they really have gained some skills and gained some confidence in raising their voices in the community. So we'll be looking to see what they create next. And here is just a final quote from one of the filmmakers who came to Kathmandu, which I think it's a really nice quote because it summarizes the impact of this particular study. She said, "Although we could not speak like the policymakers, we walked together with seniors and made them understand our issue." And I think this really summarizes nicely also the power of participatory action research. Your community members are getting empowered through this process. We are learning as scientists, as social scientists, as health educators. We recognize the value of research, but here the community members are recognizing that we can raise our voice. With this tool, we can now go to policymakers and have an impact. And I think this really nicely summarizes the issue there and how participatory action research can be used to also empower your communities that you're working with. So that's all that I have, but I'd be curious to see if people have questions. I'm happy to clarify anything that you might have questions about, or if you have ideas. I would love to hear if you have ideas about how filmmaking or other participatory tools can be used in your work in Nepal as well. So please let me know if you have any ideas on that as well. Thank you.
Can we see the sub?